everybody, how is it going? Custom card contest number 7. I know, I'm finally getting around to it. Took me a while. It's just that there was other stuff that I wanted to look at, like in other games. A lot of new really cool mods came out for some games I wanted to check out. So I've been just kind of putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. But I finally got around to it after getting beaten up in Laurentio's chat to finally get my ass moving and get this done. So here we go. So this one, we're trying to come up with a new mechanic / improvement or development for new archetypes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to just quickly run through these. How I'm going to judge this, it's going to be based on both the most interesting mechanic and like who's got the coolest card. And slight twist at the end regarding the winner that you'll see. So anyways, it's kicking it off. Got Cutorg Brawler here by what was it? Yuvancer. Oh wow, that's a lot. Anyways, so Frenzy, basically when a creature with Frenzy takes damage and survives, it gets a Pain Emblem. Pain Emblem by itself is just like Target Emblem, doesn't do anything until like the effect tells it to. So this one gets extra attack for each Pain Emblem. So if it attacks and survives, it'll be a 2/3, then a 3/3, etc. Then you can remove a Pain Emblem and pay 1 mana, deal 1 damage to all allied creatures. I assume this means itself too, because it says all allied creatures. So that means he'll basically just reload his Pain Emblem. Looks like a solid card to try to help that like slave archetype with like forced labor and stuff. Like a decent way to activate your slaves, because you just play this guy. As soon as he gets a Pain Emblem, you can then like activate it. It's a decent start, decent idea. The fact that it's a 1/3 means it's going to be a little bit difficult to activate in the beginning, because it's not going to kill anything except like goblins. But once you do activate it, it'll work out. It's a decent enough 2-drop. I think you could play it with the Tortured Orc. Might actually give that deck, that slave deck, a little bit of a push. It's interesting. The other card is the Camp Follower. It's a support card with 0 speed. Pretty cool. And then this loses health for each Pain Emblem, and then you just ready an Exhausted Warrior to give this an emblem. Basically, you could think of this as a battery. You activate it, and then you can ready something. Friendly Warrior. Now, there's not a lot of warriors in the game. There's a few, though. But, yeah, it's just simple support. I think it's a little weak. It's kind of like Disciple of Zash, but it eventually runs out, because it, once there's enough Pain Emblems, it just dies. That said, the idea it represents is interesting, because it's like it's like a finite resource, right? You got the ability, but you can't do it every single turn. You are gonna run out eventually. So I think this card is pretty weak, but it gives us an interesting insight into the kind of card we could create, like a creature with a limited number of charges. It's kind of like with energy, but instead, once it reaches 0 energy, it just dies. So it's kind of neat. So, yeah, I guess the mechanic here is Frenzy with the Pain Emblems. Yeah, it's an idea to try to introduce more emblems. I don't know if you necessarily want more emblems. Maybe this should just be target emblems. I don't know, honestly. But, yeah, it's a decent enough idea. We got a Gwyndian, the Master Mage. So this one is... Okay, so first of all, the mechanic here is Banish, and Banish stuff gets sent to the grave face down, and then anything that has like an on-death effect is not triggered, and they can be like Resurrect or anything, whatever, but they're still in your graveyard. So this one, when it enters the field, you may banish your hand, and then if you do, draw 5 cards, and then any mage creatures and spells are 3 mana cheaper. So if you top deck this, you get to draw 5 cards. That's pretty cool. That said, it's not even that OP, because a creature of this cost, it's competing with stuff like Dragon and Karthus, and if all it's doing is drawing you some cards, it's really not even that good. Now, making the mage creatures and spells cheaper, there's like a handful of mages here and there. By itself, this isn't gonna like give mages anything to work with. You'd be looking at this card and thinking just as in terms of value, but I mean, in terms of value, it's solid, right? You can kind of like reload your hand if it's bad. But generally, these control decks that would run a card like this generally are not short of cards, because they run Library Guards, they run Djinn, Ancient Wisdom, or whatever. So Yeah, I don't know. It seems it will probably be really good in like draft, like draw 5 cards. Great top deck too. It's an interesting card. A Dimensional Rift. Every time a card is banished, this gains energy, and then you can channel the energy into like energy cost. So basically, accumulates energy. One neat thing about this, I mean, because banishing right now it would only come from the one card. It would not. This wouldn't really serve any purpose. But you can almost think of this as a card that holds energy, right? It holds 2 energy, and you can use it for whatever. Kind of like the Glittis guy. So you could play this with Unstable Reactor, and the reactor can just pump energy into this, right? And gaining energy itself to just kind of like store up the energy and like just keep going. And then you can just use this energy to channel stuff. Now, the energy aggro deck wouldn't run this because it's not a creature, it's too slow. But I'm sure some shenanigans would be thought up. So a card like this, for the future, for an energy-based deck, having a card that can store the energy and like use it for other stuff might be interesting, even if you just disregard the banish mechanic. I think the Dimensional Rift is a cool card. We got Marcus with Long Strike. So how this works is you can attack a creature that's faster than itself, or you can like interact with the creature 1 speed faster than itself. So it's like a 2-speed creature with Long Strike has 3 speed, but it can be attacked by 2-speed creatures. So okay, all right, fair enough. This one's also deadly. If it has a shield emblem, it's unstoppable. Well, I mean, okay. And then when it deals damage to the enemy hero, look at their hand. It's okay. Putting like unstoppable on this isn't really gonna help. You could basically think of this as an elf warrior with deadly. Maybe you could think of it as Silverfang, actually. That's actually a much better way to think of it. It's a little bit worse because it can be attacked by 2-speed creatures. The effect of looking at their hand, that's not really that big of a deal because, you know, with Temptress, you also get to discard their cards. But, I don't know. That's an interesting card, I guess. It's kind of cool. Long Strike as a mechanic, it's like a compromise. It's like giving creatures 3 speed without actually giving them 3 speed. Which maybe is good, because it would make it easier to, like, deal with elf decks by, like, giving stuff Long Strike. That way they have 3 speed, but they can still be interacted with by 2-speed creatures. So, yeah, Long Strike, it's a pretty cool idea. We got Sarai Confessor, Flying Long Strike, Legendary 0/6. Man, I think somebody has used this art before in a different contest. Yeah, I've seen this card before. Anyway, it's for Magic the Gathering. So, this gets +1 attack for every creature with a shield emblem on it under your control. So, it's a ongoing effect. With 4 aspects, those guys also get lifebound. So, oh, it's an Angel Priest. So, I guess the idea is to play the Priest card that gives all your Priests shields. Basically, because otherwise it has 0 attack, which is terrible. So, for this to be good, it has to have, what, at least 3 attack? Probably? Something like that. So you got to get 3 shielded creatures. It seems like a lot of work to get it to actually go, because it's an ongoing effect. If you lose those guys, you won't be able to, like, this won't have the attack. So yeah, it's help for priests. Like, a question, look at this way: would an angel deck run this? Probably not, even though they have some priests, because they have no way to get shields on stuff. Like, you're not gonna run that Solemn Prayer card, really, and that other priest that's 4 mana that puts shields on stuff in an angel deck. So the angel has to stand on its own, and this one does not. Long Strike is nice because it's almost like a 0/6 3-speed blocker, but because it has 0 attack, it's just worse than Guardian, and it's more mana too. It seems like a lot of work for this to be actually good. At 4 aspects, it can get better because you're giving stuff lifebound. It's supposed to go into the deck with Solemn Prayer and that, I kind of forget what it's called, the 3/2 that gives 2 guys shields. Then you're getting a bunch of shielded lifebound creatures. Could be good, but this card I think starts off at a too low level to be good. Neat idea, but ultimately I don't think this would see play. So yeah, bonus points for Long Strike. I think that's kind of cool, but the cards are a bit uninspired, but it's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna close it out by saying that. Neither of these cards makes me go, whoa, I want to play this. But, like, this one is just, like, solid. And a long strike is a great idea for allowing you to interact with 3 speed without being 3 speed yourself. So I think having a long strike, like being able to give stuff long strike, even as a hero power, might be interesting. It's actually very similar to lowering the enemy speed. Anyways, we've got Vitamin C giving us the Cavalry Commander. I guess he's friends with Cavalry Field Captain. So this one... Alright, so basically, it has a different text depending on whether or not it's in the front or it's in the support. So, I guess you could say that's the new mechanic. That's actually kind of cool. So, if it's in the front, all your creatures have the ability to move themselves to the back for 1 mana, just kind of like the way Cavalry Field can do it, including himself. And then if it's in the support row, at the start of your turn, creatures on your support row can pay 1 mana to go to the front and gain Swift. So it's kind of like Felix, where you can just go back. It's a little bit worse than Felix because it's more expensive and you have to pay the mana to do it. Like, it seems like a fair card, like a decent card. I just doubt this would be played because it's just, like, this kind of lane shenanigans is not where Spellweaver is right now. Like, we don't play the game with, like, kind of messing around on the rows, protecting your stuff. I mean, as a creature, it's not that bad because he can protect himself and then he can just come back. Seems like a decent knight. Would knights play something like this? I don't know, honestly. Again, it seems like the kind of creature I would rate as, like, okay, the 2-star, which is, seems decent, but probably not good enough for constructed. Probably will be fine in draft. Though, the idea of front-end support is very interesting, though, because it allows you to have a creature that basically does 2 things. Like, it can have 2 different roles in your deck. That's a really cool idea. It's just that this one is not really that great. But I like the idea. And then this one, Krios the Sheer Cold. This one is just front. At the start of your turn, freeze all enemy creatures. It's pretty bad because the stat line is absolutely terrible. And he has to survive, right? I mean, unless you combine it with this where you move him to the front at the start of your turn, but that's double blue. That's not going to work out. So, freezing all enemy creatures is pretty good, but you have to put him in the front, and he has to survive in the front for a turn, and with that stat line, he's not surviving anything. So, yeah, I just wish this guy had, like, a back ability, where, like, you know, if he's in the back, like, deal 1 damage to all frozen creatures or something. This guy needs a little bit more. As is, it's pretty awful. But, the front and back mechanic, pretty cool. Spectral Wolf. A very simple card. The mechanic here is Intimidate. When a creature with Intimidate engages in combat, you can give an enemy creature -1 attack during that combat. So, it's kind of good, I guess. You could almost think of it as a 1/3, but he can give them -attack to something else, and not just the creature he's fighting. So, it's an interesting card. It's a solid... It's got a cool mana cost where it's got, like, the Golem cost. With a... You know, it's not too aggressive. It's only got 1 attack. You know, it can, like, defend against elf warriors. And if you have multiple of these, it could be pretty nasty, actually. Pretty cool. And then this one, Coordinated Hunting. As long as you control a wolf. Oh, yeah, this is a wolf. So, Wolf Tongue synergy. As long as you control a wolf, all of your creatures have Intimidate. So, they all reduce enemy attack. So, like, this card is exactly in the same category as, like, Hands from Beyond. Where you would never play it in a deck. But if you actually played it and put it on the board, it's really ridiculous. Just like in draft, if you've ever played against Hands from Beyond, like, you never see the card in Constructed, but you know what a pain in the ass it is. So, that's pretty cool. Now, of course, there's no wolves in the game. There's just this one and the one that comes out of, you know, the Silver Fang. So, it'd be pretty hard. You couldn't really play this without more wolves. This one, though? Yeah, maybe. I mean, nature decks do want more 3-speed 2-drops. This one's not too aggressive, but it would actually help the others trade. Yeah, maybe nature would even run this, and now Wolf Tongue becomes better because these guys become 3/4s with haste and Intimidate. Pretty nasty. Yeah, for such a simple card, it's actually surprisingly cool. The Intimidate mechanic... I'm just a little worried that if like too many of these would make your board like unclearable. But that's a cool idea. I'm happy bringing us some cool stuff. So Hidden is kind of like Stealth from Hearthstone, where until the creature attacks, it can't be like attacked. But apparently it's only protected from attacks. It's not protected from spells. And if it does not attack, it gets a re-stealth, I guess. Alright, so this one, Aru Death's Shadow. It's deadly and hidden. At the start of your turn, gets 1 energy. For 3 energy, it gets ranged and 1 speed. So basically it gets to like free kill whatever it wants. It's double nature, which means it's actually not so easy to fit into a deck. Because a lot of decks that run nature these days are running like another aspect. The Hermelian green deck runs double order. The Dominion elves run Dominion. Energy aggro runs Wisdom. None of those decks actually run double nature. Would this be enough to make them run double nature? I don't think so. It is an elf though. Synergy with Niena and all that other stuff. And if you wait long enough, it turns into a free kill. I mean, the fact that it's hidden is nice because it'll basically stick on the board unless it's like assassinated or something. That's cool. It's just it'd be kind of hard to play because of the requirement. But hidden does seem like a mechanic we should have in the game. Elvish Brigand. It's another like a kind of like a generic card. It's a 2-mana 2 aspect 3/2 with hidden. Can attack the support line, similar to the Grove Sentinel, but doesn't have ranged. That does make it a lot worse, but because it's hidden, it can kind of stick on the board a little better. It's hard to tell whether this will be played. It's another elf. More synergy for elves. The stat line's kind of bad, though. The 3/2 with 2 speed means it doesn't really... It's just going to trade with like a 2-drop or something. So, not too great. The attack the support, though, that does come in handy. It can pick off like Flesh Sculptors and stuff. And because it's hidden, your opponent like can't free kill it, too. So... seems alright. Kind of like decent, interesting, like, not exactly vanilla, but like, I want to call them like generic cards in the sense that they are like kind of mild. But you know what? Hidden is pretty cool. Even if these creatures are, I don't know, this one's kind of cool, but it seems like a lot of effort. And you have to wait 2 turns before you can actually do the deadly thing. And because if it was 1 nature, I think it would actually be really good. Maybe even too good, because you could splash it, and then you could combine it with like energy aggro and stuff like that, and it would just be like another 3-speed creature that nature could play. But with double nature, it's a bit rough. So, yeah. Good enough. Alright, so this one's going to be a bit of a read. So the mechanic here is Battle Hardened, and it reads that when they engage in combat and survive, you get a Might Emblem. Okay. So similar to the Pain Emblem, but you get a Might Emblem, which is obviously better. So this one, interestingly, this was originally a 3/3, but somebody said they would be OP because it would be better than Vanguard. Wouldn't necessarily be better than Vanguard because it's double order, and it's not a soldier. So not quite. Taking health down from 3 to 2 makes a card a lot worse. So keep that in mind. Actually, I think that makes this card trash, because how is this going to survive a fight when it has 2 health, right? Most creatures that are played have at least 2 attacks, so it's not going to kill anything. With 3 health, it maybe was... Okay, maybe it probably should have been a 2/3 in that case. The idea of Battle Hardened, it's kind of cool. It's a way to create, like, good mid-range creatures. That, you know, if they kill something, they get bigger, they get more and more dangerous. This one, when it enters the field, you can ready other dwarves you control. I'm not sure how many dwarves there really are. Okay, Gomer is a dwarf. I guess that's pretty good. Is that enough to run this? Probably not. Because the creature, again, because the 2 health is just not a very good card. The Battle Hardened doesn't really help it unless you can shield it. But because it has double order requirement, like Hermelian Green wouldn't be able to play this at all because it's too slow. Its cost would basically be equivalent to Namir, and this is considerably worse than Namir. So I think making this a 2/3 would have been a little bit more interesting. Alright, and the next one, Dwarf Falconer. Another legendary card, Battle Hardened, 5/3, so some interesting stat lines here. When he enters the field, and at the start of your turn, you get a Falcon onto the field. The Falcon is a 4-speed, 1/1 summon Swift, but can't block. That's actually pretty good, because it gets on the board immediately. It can tie up a blocker, or you could trade with something. So it seems pretty decent. Health is a little bit low, but it's got the 5/3 base. It's like the Bedeviled Fiend. Battle Hardened, again, because it only has 3 health, it's not so easy for it to actually gain Might Emblems, but it is easier because it can actually, like, kill stuff. Would this be played? It's a soldier. I don't know. Maybe. It seems like a cool card. Probably would be good in a draft. But the stats are not great for a creature that wants to survive battles. Probably a 4/4 would be better for it. Especially since, again, it's double order. You're supposed to play this with Hermelian, I guess, because then you get to, like, attack twice, and then you get buffed. Like, if this sticks on the board and you Hermelian and it can kill something, it get pretty nasty. Just double check something. Yeah, it has to be a creature. Okay, it can't just be attack and get a Might Emblem. You have to survive. So, yeah, the Falconer does make it a pretty good card, like a decent value card, because these things, like, this is actually pretty good. Like, 4-speed summon Swift. That's pretty good. Moving on, we got one of the strangest cards in this submission, Luxus Dragons. So, the Steadfast, which is the new mechanic, is actually explained on the card. So, okay, so let's just read this. Whenever this creature will be destroyed by damage for the first time each turn, if it were dealt damage exactly equal to its health, then it survives with 1 health. So what does that actually mean? It means that if he takes 2 damage, he survives with 1 health. But if he takes 1 damage twice, it doesn't survive. Okay, so you could kill it with, like, Power Discharge and, like, another Power Discharge. But it's basically a 2/3 for the purpose. It's like Steadfast gives you 1 extra health unless you get hit by 2 sources. But getting hit by 2 1 damage sources is a bit unlucky because in combat, the damage is dealt at the same time. So even if this was attacked by 2 1/1s, it still survives because the 2 damage is dealt simultaneously. So it's basically a 2/3. So the stat line is actually good then. It's a 2/3 with 3 speed. That's 2 mana, 2 aspect. That's solid. They actually might be played just because of that. Not even kidding. Yeah, it's a spirit, but doesn't matter. The effect deals 2 damage to itself. So it would survive, obviously. That's the idea. And then you can give something else Steadfast. So kind of giving it 1 health. Yeah, it seems solid. Good stat line. Just, yeah, it's pretty much all there is to say. Competes with Vanguard reasonably well. Because, again, it's basically a 2/3. Although it does die to Noxious Fumes. So it's almost like a 2/3. I think the idea is to try to make it like a 2.5. Yeah, it's kind of like the Militant Automaton, which is a 2/2, but it's kind of like a 3/3 really. But it's a 2/2 because it dies to 2 damage. This dies exactly to Noxious Fumes, but otherwise it's basically a 2/3 because it's going to be very hard to do 1 damage to it twice. Well, like, I mean, you could double Power Discharge, but you could kill anything with 2 Power Discharges anyways. Yeah, it's a solid card by itself. It's an interesting introduction with this mechanic, although, I don't know, Steadfast, I don't know if it's like, it's kind of like a, I don't know, I'm going to move on. It's an alright card, but not exciting enough to win the contest. Zakharik brings us a curse. Death Curse Riders. When an allied shaman enters the field, you may pay 1 energy and then summon a Zealot of Sorrow. And where is it? Oh, there you go. Zealot of Sorrow is a 1 mana 1/1, also a shaman. So he can actually trigger it a second time. And as Cruelty. Cruelty means it when a enemy minion dies, you steal 1 life from the enemy. So it's a totem that summons more shamans. That's interesting, actually, because if you play a shaman with this, you get like a second shaman immediately. That could potentially be really good. With only 2 energy, though, I don't know if it'd be room for that in the shaman deck. The new mechanic, by the way, is Cruelty. That is to say, when an enemy creature dies, Cruelty causes you to steal 1 life from the enemy. That's probably actually good, because you want to steal life as a shaman, you get extra stuff. Like, extra life helps you survive. As a shaman, that's your main concern, surviving the early game. And then the next card, Cruel Blade, a legendary. I wonder if you try to resist the temptation of calling this Cruel Tech. It's got cruelty again. It's a 2/2. When he enters the field, you may return a totem from your graveyard onto the field. Oh dear God. So you know how I said this might not be played? Well, this is definitely gonna be played if it was a card, because returning a totem is insane. Like, you play this, you get like a Legends totem for a bunch of extra draw. Get back a Lightning totem. Oh my goodness, this would be a great card. And actually, because of cruelty, like if you play this and you got a bunch of Lightning totems on the board, you can like start killing all their stuff and getting life. Needless to say, this card would be really, really good if you were gonna play this in a Corruption Shaman deck. And you would put this in a Corruption Shaman deck. Maybe not 4 copies, but at least 2 copies, because it's just tremendous value. Getting a totem back is really, really good. The reason you don't run 4 is because you don't really want to play this on turn 4, because you probably will not have used up a totem by then. But strong card, but no art. Aww. It's a shame. I feel like Cruel Blade could have a really badass art here. Now this one, for this submission, is going to take a little bit of explaining, because this guy submitted actually like 7 cards. But then he was told that you can only submit 2. So he chose these 2. I'm going to completely disregard what he said, and I'm just going to basically choose a different one of his cards, because that's the card that matters. So he created 1 card, 1 Crystal Spirit for each of the aspects. And the idea is that all these cards are completely broken, especially this one. This is so busted, it's not even funny. And they have the ability called Crystallization, which basically, for all of these, as long as you control the creature, you have like 2 extra mana, right? Like 2 extra mana crystals. And here's the point. I'm basically gonna kind of modify this guy's submission. This is Will Silver. And say that these 6 cards are not collectible. You cannot put these into your deck because they'll be completely ridiculous. Like this one, it's the same cost as Mutant. Well, it's double Dominion, but it's got 3/4 with 4 speed, which gives you 2 mana, and you can pay 2 mana to put a target emblem or a might emblem on an enemy creature, and if this dies, you can just take control of a creature with an emblem. So you play this, you hit an enemy creature, and you're gonna steal that creature. You can actually mark any number of creatures, and then as soon as this dies, you get to steal one. Yeah, it's completely insane, with such a ridiculous stat line. Yeah, most of these are just completely broken, like way too good. Now, the actual submission, the actual card, is the Crystallization. So, this is an artifact blessing. Once per turn, pay 1 energy to gain an aspect. So, it's kind of like New Horizons, but it's limited. You only get it 5 times. That's probably more than enough. And now, pay 4 mana and exhaust it to sacrifice a creature and summon a Crystal Spirit that is one of those 6 cards with the same first aspect as that one. So, if you sacrifice a corruption creature, you get to summon this. If you sacrifice a Dominion creature, you get to summon this. So the idea is, these guys are kind of like these powerful aspects, and you get these guys by sacking corresponding creatures. So the idea with Crystallization is you pull it in a rainbow deck, and you can sacrifice various little creatures, and then you can put these powerful Crystallization guys on the board, because every single one of those crystal guys is insane, right? And it has a secondary effect. If you have all 6 aspects, then at the end of the enemy turn, you win the game. And you can bet your ass people will be winning games with this, because with New Horizons, you could easily get yourself up in aspects. This can give you an aspect, and combined with Obelisk of Unity, it would not be very difficult to actually get all of these aspects and win the game. This could launch a new kind of deck, like similar to One Turn Heal, but a little different. Now, it says at the end of the enemy turn, so your opponent gets 1 extra turn to try to kill you before they win. But because you can't destroy aspects, like, they have to run artifact removal to get rid of this. But the reason I like the card is because of the idea of sacrificing, like, creatures to summon, like, awesome creatures of a corresponding aspect. So, well done on that. Obviously, this is not exactly within the parameters of the contest, but I felt it was necessary. It deserves an honorable mention because it's cool. But yeah, these cards are pretty OP, so they should only exist as cards you can summon, like tokens, basically. Or transform creatures into these. That would be cool, too. So you don't just, like, lose to Outbreak. Anyways, moving on. Maximus has Donald Trump. It's pretty OP. Oh, the wall. Best card in the game. Lyris brings us Bravery. Bravery basically activates once the enemy controls more creatures than you. This one, the Enchanting Fairy gets one more attack. Well, it gets attack equal to its energy, so it would be a 4/4 flying. That's kind of cool. The card is just not that powerful. It competes with like Life Force Incarnate. It's pretty tough competition. The Bravery, though, is an interesting mechanic, and it's a way to punish aggro by making a creature more powerful if the enemy is running a lot of creatures. That's pretty cool. I like the idea, and Enchanting Fairy is a nice introduction. This could easily be just 1 nature and 2 generic, because it's not that powerful. Also, it's a fairy. It's synergy with fairies. It's not that good, but the effect is interesting. And Bravery is a cool mechanic. So, this card, this is something special. The one who guards Ivia, I don't know how you pronounce that. Immune to deadly, because why not? It's a 4/10. And the Bravery effect is, enemy creatures can only attack this. And he deals his damage to all enemies. So he deals the 4 damage to every enemy. So, yeah, basically, you put down this giant-ass blocker, and your enemy is not getting through. He has to go through. It's immune to deadly. But, I mean, of course, Tornado Outbreak would just take care of it. But if you could put Namir's Blessing on this card, that would be absolutely hilarious, because so many decks would just not be able to ever deal with it. It's got 10 health. How do you kill this, right? It's just awesome. It's just really funny. I mean, it's obviously ridiculously expensive. It's the same cost as Berserk. So unless you're intending to reanimate this, yeah, maybe you could reanimate this. It's not like realistic to play. But yeah, like, it's a cool reanimation target, because your opponent has to have removal, basically, or they will not kill it. Or like Red Dragon or something. But unfortunately, Karthus can kill it. What a bummer. But no, I just like the idea of a giant blocker. This is maybe a little bit too much. You could scale it down, make it like a 3/6, but like 4 mana 3 aspects or something. This is a little bit too much, but it's really funny. Alright, next up, we've got Usagi with a rather complicated set of cards. I'm basically going to ignore this one, because this card is like that one, but just like better and more complicated. So we're going to focus on this. So we got quite a lot of keywords. Building, haunting, and resistant. So, okay, I'm just going to go here. So building cannot attack or switch lanes, which means when you play it, it's going to go in the front row automatically because it has no support. But if you could put Mantle of the Winds on it, because they're still creatures. Yeah, these are still creatures, unfortunately. Does not heal at the end of turn. That's important. Can block independent of its speed. So this, they have like 4, I mean, so they basically have 4 speed. Well, not quite, because they can be attacked by anything. And then, okay, this is where it gets a little complicated. When it blocks, like, you could add this as a blocker without disengaging the previous creature. And if it is attacked, you can add a different blocker without disengaging it. It's pretty convoluted, honestly. And while I like the idea of a building, basically a creature that's not a creature, that's on the board and acts as a creature but doesn't die to removal, like most removal, is a great idea. But this implementation is way too complicated. And probably OP, to be honest. And also, these things shouldn't be creatures, because like you can kill this with like Assassinate. That's kind of sad. You're gonna be really sad. Anyways, haunting. So what haunting does is, when this creature attacks, blocks, or is attacked, you can choose an enemy card and attach haunts. Haunt is the curse that causes you to spawn Enchained Souls when that card acts, equal to the level of the creature with haunting. So with this guy, if this blocks something, you get to put 4 hauntings on something. Okay, and then let's see. Last one, resistant. Cannot be killed by any effects. Okay, so Underworld Mansion cannot be killed by any effects. It has 11 health. If you put Mantle of the Winds on it, it's basically completely unkillable. Great. It is a building, so it can block whatever. It has Haunting, so if it blocks something, you can put 4 Hauntings on them. So that's gonna summon 4 Enchained Souls. And then this thing itself has effects. Like, Enchained Souls no longer are slaves, and all spirits and specters get Haunting. So the Enchained Souls themselves can start putting out haunts, and your other spirits can start putting out haunts. And then if an enemy card leaves the field and it had Hauntings on it, you burn the enemy face for each haunt. And it is a specter too. Oh my god. Okay, there's a lot going on with this card. It's probably way too much. It's absolutely hilarious, I'll give you that, because putting a lot of haunts on stuff, that's pretty funny. Basically what I'm saying is, we got to redesign the building thing a little bit. We got to redesign Haunting a little bit. And I think Resistant would just be part of the building, because it would be not a creature. Like, a building would be a new card type that is not affected by any removal, except like Fireball, I guess. Not affected by Cataclysm, but of course it does not heal, so if it's attacked, it can eventually just be destroyed with attacks, and has some cool effects. This card is probably OP. I honestly don't know. There's so much going on here. It's supposed to be synergy with like Sierra and all that stuff. This card is like almost impossible to kill, because like you have to destroy with damage, but it has 11 health, and every time you attack it, it puts 4 haunts on your ass. It's an absolutely hilarious card. You just start putting haunts on everything. But we gotta tune this down a little bit. And I love the idea of buildings. I've always thought games like Hearthstone should have it, but it needs to be not a creature. It needs to be not an artifact. It needs to be its own type of card that is likely to stick on the board, but is obviously, you know, can't attack or block or anything. Like, this should not be able to block. Like, that's insane. Anyways, really, really fun card, but it's just, like, way too wacky, I think. We got Frenzied Berserker here from Piz the Ball. Okay, I don't know. I maybe said that wrong. So, Berserk, unblockable, can block. The Berserk mechanic is the interesting one. And this one's also a pretty heavy read. Man, these guys are coming up with some really convoluted stuff. So, this one, when a creature with Berserk deals combat damage to another creature, the two are locked in combat until one is destroyed. And then, basically, what this does is that every single turn, they keep fighting each other, but they don't heal until one of them is dead. So, this guy comes down, attacks like a 2-3, and then next turn, your opponent's now 2-1 because it took 2 damage, has to attack it again. And, yeah, it just keeps going. I don't know, it's neat, but it's, like, really, really, like, complicated and a bit deep. Maybe it's a bit too much. I mean, if you just look at this card, the stat line's pretty good. It's a 2-5. And, you know, it's unblockable, but can't block, but, yeah, double red. It's probably a solid card, but the Berserk thing is kind of weird. Like, I guess it's both good and bad, because the Berserker guy just doesn't heal. So if he attacks a 2-3, he becomes a 2-3 himself because he's taken 2 damage. And so the enemy could then, like, attack it with different creatures. Although it does say that the first attack always has to be the guy that's locked in with it. So unless your opponent kills this with a spell, you could kind of, like, remove 4 health creatures by attacking it. Like, you could remove a 2-4 with this guy, in a sense. It'd be cool if this was, like, Swift. No, that's not. Forget it. That'll probably be OP. So, Berserk. What do I think of Berserk? It's kind of neat. It would be cool to have a Berserk Swift creature. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just too much. Like, it seems like we're messing with the balance of the combat a little too much. He obviously put some thought into this, but with only one Berserk card, it would be really weird. I don't even know what to think of this. We're almost there. We got Dancing Fairy bringing us Sacred Totem. So the mechanic here is the Blessed Emblem, and a creature that has a Blessed Emblem gets +1/+1 at the start of each turn. But if it attacks or it gains another emblem, the Blessed Emblem goes away. So this is a totem. It's a nature totem. Those are not too good these days. And then when an allied shaman comes into play, you put a Blessed Emblem on a creature, probably that shaman. And if it has no energy, it dies. And if you have nature, wisdom, and another aspect, you could put Blessed Emblem on up to 3 creatures. It's really bad. Why is it really bad? It's because this is not how shamans play. Shamans don't really have that many creatures on the board, and they want their totem effects to be more immediate. Like, if you play a shaman, and you put a Blessed Emblem on it, you're not actually doing anything that turn. And yeah, the shaman will grow, but more likely it'll just die. Shamans only really lose to aggro, and this does not help you with aggro. So it would not be played. It's really as simple as that. And wisdom? Like, there's no wisdom support for shamans. There is some energy support there, but you really are going out of your way to do this. So Sacred Totem just would not fit into shamans. This one, Elia Idris, this would fit into something because it's a decent creature, 1/4 stat line with flying and 3 speed. It's also a shaman, but again, you're not going to play wisdom shamans or anything like that. Blessed Emblems can't be removed from allied creatures. Basically what this means is you can have a Blessed Emblem, keep growing, and then just keep attacking. This is probably pretty powerful. You can Kayano this out, and it's a 2/5, which is pretty imposing. And for 2 mana, you can put a Blessed Emblem on something, and on a creature of good, so that's only Order, Wisdom, or Nature, prevent any damage on that creature for this turn. So it's kind of like a shield. Pretty good. This card just seems really solid. It's a fairy. You could play it in that Grand Reunion deck. You could just play it in a Kayano deck. Maybe even the Energy Aggro deck. It's just really, really solid. Yeah, solid card. The Blessed Emblem mechanic is kind of cool, but I'm always scared of any mechanic that lets creatures grow. Because basically that's what it does. And it does not, the buff does not seem to be going away. At least from what I read. The buff is not going away after you attack. At least I don't think so. Okay, you can only have one. Okay, I'm going to read this. You can only have one Blessed Emblem. They get +1/+1 at the start of its controller's turn, and then remove it if the creature attacks or gets another Might Emblem. But do you get to keep the buff? That's very important. So that's a little bit unclear. I assume you get to keep the buff, so that would be pretty powerful. If you put a creature on the support or with a Blessed Emblem, and then you just keep growing. Kind of like Runelet in that sense, but Runelet, you know, is balanced by the fact that it gets smaller if it attacks stuff. That creature wouldn't. Pretty dangerous stuff, but this card's pretty neat. Alright, so we got Idea, I think. I don't know how to say that name. So, Hermit Silencer. So, look at this. Now, this, I can respect. He basically made like a 6-color little aspect here. So, what this actually means is you can pay for this aspect with any aspect. But, if there's more than one, every new one, you have to pay with a different aspect. So, in the case of Hermit Silencer, you have to have 2 different aspects and 3 aspects total. So, pretty easy to play. A 1/6, oh, you can see it. 1/6, whenever an enemy creature activates a power, just exhaust it. And if it's already exhausted, it deals the damage to it and freezes it. So, it causes creatures that have that can activate their powers multiple times to just only be able to do it once, like Necromantic Cult. And if the creature already exhausts itself, it'll then freeze itself in addition to that. It's pretty funny, actually. It'll kill Disciples of Zash, basically, because they'll just deal 1 damage to themselves. It seems like a cool counter card, and because it's almost like a neutral card. You can, as long as you run 2 aspects, you can run this in anything. It's got a good enough stat line, 1/6. Yeah, it seems interesting. It seems like you would maybe run this in something depending on the meta. I actually kind of like this card. The idea with the multi-aspect is cool. It's kind of like it's neutral. But, no, it's basically neutral, but with the caveat that you have to have 2 different aspects. It's a cool card. Cutthroat Rogue. So this one is 3. So you have to have 3 different aspects to play this. That's asking a lot. It's deadly. It's a 2/3. Can block even if exhausted. That's cool, I guess. And then you can exhaust him to ready all other creatures, spells, and artifacts. That is a dangerous ability because there's no cost, which means that if you have 2 of them on the board, you could do it endlessly. Yeah, if you have 2 of these and a Disciple of Zash, you win, basically. Oh, no, not win, because you have to pay 1 mana, but you can activate it a bunch of times. But yeah, if you have any, like, ability that needs to be exhausted, you can activate it an unlimited number of times. That's dangerous. I think that's very dangerous. A card like this probably needs to be legendary or has the effect where it does not ready other cutthroat rogues, because you could just break it somehow. That being said, the card is pretty expensive to play, and the stats are not like that amazing or anything. So this would most likely just be used as just for the second effect, for ready everything. I'm not even sure, considering how much aggro there is in the meta right now, this wouldn't fit in any current deck, because it's right now all we're seeing is just like aggro, like dragon combo, and like in Conquest you've got like mid-range counters to aggro, stuff like that. So this wouldn't really fit anywhere, because we're not really running any 3-color decks except like chicken decks. But what are you really gonna like what would you want to abuse this with? You want to keep like readying, like you could use Unstable Reactor and just keep pumping out energy. Actually, that could be it. You could just, if you have 2 of these, an Unstable Reactor, and a guy that produces golems, you just get unlimited golems, right? You reactor your guy. I mean, okay, reactor would kill all your golems. That's a bad example. But you get the idea. Sooner or later, you'd find a way to break this. This is inevitable. So, cool card, but it's kind of broken. Even if it's not necessarily powerful, but it's just broken. It invites brokenness. Now, we move on to my favorite submissions. These last 4 are my favorite submissions. So, Krollmeister brings us the Burrow mechanic, which is like suspend from Magic, with the caveat that your opponent doesn't see what the card is. However, because they can see how many Burrow counters it has, they should be able to figure out what it is. But if there were more Burrow cards, then your opponent wouldn't necessarily know what it is. So this one, Gushing Magma, you can burrow it for 1 mana. And then when it activates, deals X damage to all enemy creatures and destroys all artifacts when X is your total level. I really like this card. It's a board clear. It's kind of expensive if you hard cast it, but it could clear for 2 or 3, which is pretty good. If you burrow it, it's kind of like a delayed nuke. Like you could do this turn 2, as early as turn 2, and then like 3 turns later, it's going to nuke the board. The interesting thing though, your opponent can play around because they'll know it's coming. If they see Rage Nature and you see, oh, burrow 3, I wonder what it is, then they'll know it's coming. The reason I like this burrow mechanic is because it lets cards be played in more than one way. And that's really awesome. And you know what? We could use some board clears. And Gushing Magma is pretty cool. I'm not sure if it needs to be double aspect requirement. Would it really be that powerful if it was just Rage or even just Nature? I think it could be just one or the other, and it'd be a pretty good board clear that we really need right now. Cool card. Burrow mechanic is really awesome. And this one, I don't even know how to pronounce this. The Deep Terror. It's just called Giant Ass Snake, the Deep Terror. Unstoppable Lifebound 7/7. This card is exactly why Reanimate is a problem, because you can just reanimate this. It does. Yeah, it costs 9 mana. Here's a newsflash. You're never going to cast this for 9 mana. You're going to burrow it for 3 mana. It's going to come out, and if it's dead, you just reanimate it. Yeah. It's pretty good stuff. Now, the only issue with this card is that when it's burrow, that is when it comes out, it gets -1 health and -1 speed, but it becomes deadly, and it becomes immune to effects. So it's a 7/6 deadly, unstoppable, lifebound, unaffected by effects that you paid 3 mana for. Yeah, I don't know about that. You can do this as early as turn 4, and then yeah, it's burrow 6, but it's basically like a win condition because it's almost impossible to kill. Like it's basically impossible to kill, and just even reanimating this, you were reanimating like a super vamp lamp because it's got lifebound. You play this, you kill something, you get a bunch of life. So yeah, creatures like this are why reanimate's an issue. But if it wasn't for that, I think it's a really cool card. The second effect is probably just unnecessary, honestly. Just the huge stat line, the unstoppable and lifebound is more than enough. You don't need to make this like immune to effects, goodness me. But cool. Next we've got Raveneer with Erigol, the Tainted Overseer. So this one, The Shadow Mirage is listed as an effect, but the effect is so powerful, I'm basically just going to disregard it, and I'm going to pretend this is text on the card. What it does is the creature comes into play, you just take an enemy card, put it underneath this, and this gains all text and all effects from that card. The reason this can't be a keyword because it's way too powerful. This is a good effect for a single, really powerful legendary, but you can't have this on like more than one card. It would be insane. Ascension, however, now that's interesting. So how Ascension works is when the creature would die, it's removed from the game, and then you can pay the Ascension cost, in this case it's 4 mana, and then activate the effect. So it's like a nuke. It seems OP, but keep in mind you have to have 4 mana, and the stat line isn't that good. Now, of course, the Shadow Mirage effect is insane. Basically, you could read this. It's a 3/3 flying. When Ergal enters the field, put another card underneath it. Ergal has all of its effects, or something like that. When it leaves the field, goes back on the board. Maybe he wrote down Shadow Mirage to save on text. I don't know. But yeah, I really like the idea. The card itself is very powerful, very interesting. And Ascension, similarly to Burrow, gives you like multiple ways to play a card. Now, the Ascension cards are removed from the game, so you can't like reanimate them. That's pretty fair. Now, he did not exactly state this, but it would appear that you always remove it, like even if you can't activate the Ascension. So if there's other cards with Ascension and you can't activate their effects, they just get removed, which kind of sucks, but maybe it's not a big deal. So yeah, really cool. The other card, the Sacred Grove, is a shrine. Order, Nature, and then for 2 mana you can give all your guys Ascension 1 mana, draw a card, gain 2 life, or put a Might Emblem on a creature. So basically, you activate this, and then for the rest of the turn, whenever one of your creatures dies, pay 1 mana and get one of these effects. Very nice, but the problem is, you have to have a lot of mana to make this work. I would honestly make this 3 mana, but make the Ascension free. So then whenever you lose a creature this turn, you get to draw a card, gain 2 life, or get a free Might Emblem. That would make it a little bit more realistic, and maybe interesting in some kind of a mid-range deck maybe. But it is restricted to 2 specific colors. Care Bears, maybe, would play this. But then, giving your guys Ascension means they can't be brought back by Instill Life, which is a bit of a problem. Cool idea, but it seems hard to actually use this. Now, oh yeah, by the way, if this were to be made a card, please don't make it Dominion. Dominion does not need any more insane legendaries. Like, give this to, I don't know, Corruption? Yeah, that's fine. Corruption and Wisdom. Yeah, or Corruption and Rage. Corruption and Order. There you go. Make it interesting. Not Dominion. Just not Dominion. We got Hikari with Miriam, the Hoarder of Secrets. One of the best looking arts I've seen so far. It's a legendary 2 mana 3 aspects. Spy. So how Spy works is that when a creature that has Spy deals damage to face or kills a creature, you get to look at a number of cards from the top of your opponent's deck equal to the mana cost. So for Miriam, it would be 2. And then you can pay half that. So in case of Miriam, pay 1. And add one of those cards to your hand. Directly to your hand. So the thing is, though, because it doesn't say that the cards have like a different, like they don't become colorless or anything, you won't be able to play a lot of those cards. So it's really not much better than like Temptress. Actually, it's worse because you're picking a card from their deck instead of their hand. But the idea is interesting. Now, this also has a second effect. Yeah, if it comes into play, pay 3 mana, give up to 3 creatures, Spy. Though it seems unlikely you'd actually have enough mana and like that many creatures. But it's there. And then the last effect, if you have 5 or more creatures with Spy, they play with their hand revealed. Honestly, I'll just cut this effect entirely because it's so unlikely to happen. And it saves space on the card. So I like the Spy mechanic, even though I'm not a big fan of stealing cards from the deck. At the very least, you can kind of counterplay it because, well, they have to play this, and it has to actually attack. So it's not like it's immediate, like Advance Despina. But yeah, I don't know how you deal with the problem of like stealing cards that you just can't play. How I would make this is you steal a card, but instead of actually taking it, you just make a copy of it and add it to your hand, and it's colorless. So you can play it, but they don't lose it. Like, that would be interesting. I would like to really see that. Al, Anon, Allies. Basically, your guys with Spy get deadly. Not very good because this is the only Spy creature. And yeah, she can give other stuff Spy, but yeah, it's pretty expensive to use. But it's not that bad. If you have a slot, it's not a bad idea, because if a spy creature has deadly, it's basically guaranteed to work, since, well, it's gonna, if you attack face, like, it's either gonna hit face or it's gonna kill its blocker. So it's gonna activate. So you probably would use it anyways. Yeah, it's neat. But I would rework the spy mechanic. So yeah. Really beautiful art though, like fits perfectly. And the last one, we've got Zoralon with Taunt. So Taunt is a mechanic that has been discussed in the past as, hey, this should be in the game, right? And how it works is, if you have a creature on the board with Taunt that's not exhausted, your opponent has to assign at least one attacker to it if he's gonna attack at all, right? That's how it works. With that in mind, we got Elf Guardian, 3-2 with 3 speed, Taunt. It's pretty bad because the stat line is not very good. The Taunt doesn't help it. Like, enemy Elf Warriors would want to attack this anyways, just to kill it. And the 4 aspect effect is not nearly good enough. The card is kind of bad, but the Taunt mechanic, good stuff. Now, this card, this might just be my favorite card of the entire contest. Actually, you know what? It is my favorite card of the entire contest. Necromancer Protector. So 4 mana, 1/4, support, has Taunt. Other allied zombies have Taunt. And then at the start of your turn, gain 1 energy, and then you can pay 2 energy to put a shield emblem on a zombie. Taunt is something zombies would benefit from greatly. It would make their 1 speed good. Because if you put Taunt on a zombie giant, it suddenly becomes a much better card. Because your opponent has to attack into it. Like, if he wants to go hit your face, he's going to have to sack a creature to do it. Right? And that's awesome. Now, the only problem with this card is this makes Hardsford absolutely ridiculous, because this is a zombie itself. So you can play Hardsford, bring this back, bring back a Necromancer, and like another zombie, and you've got 3 blockers that are all taunted and deadly. And you can even start distributing shields. So I would really like this card to be... I really want Necromancer Protector to be in the game. But I don't want it to work with Hartsford, because that's ludicrous. But I think that's Hartsford's problem more than anything. So, I promised you a twist, right? Because I could not decide a winner in this time. There were 3 really good ones. I'm going to choose 3 of these cards to be representatives of their mechanic and just of the awesomeness that they are. And I'm going to let you guys choose a winner. We're going to have a little vote. Choose your winner. After the first person gets, like, let's say 5 votes, that person is announced the winner. And they get to choose the next theme. Yep, I'm just going to totally wash my hands of any responsibility for this one and let you guys decide. Isn't that how you should be doing it? So, this is one of the representatives. So, from Zoralon, we've got Necromancer Protector. That represents the Taunt mechanic and is just an awesome card. I would pick this, but the Spy mechanic is... this incarnation, it needs to be reworked a little bit, I think. We've got Ergol, the representative of Ascension, and a potentially very powerful late game card from Ravenier. And we've got Gushing Magma, the representative of Burrow, and a very awesome board clear from Krollmeister. These are the 3 things. Krollmeister with Gushing Magma, Ravenier with Ergol, the Tenyan Overseer, and Zoralon with... there you go, with the Necromancer Protector. These are the 3 guys I nominate for the best card. So yeah, pick one of those. The first one to get 5 votes, like the first one to have 5 people say, I vote for this, will be the winner. Vote away. Anyway, thanks for watching. It was a long video. There was a lot of cards to go over. I really gotta try to make these contests a little bit more concise, because they're not supposed to be hour-long videos. And yeah, when you allow people to submit multiple cards, you gotta go over a lot of cards. I could have cut down a lot and just cover the favorite ones, but there were a lot of cool mechanics I wanted to kind of discuss, because there's a lot of good ideas, even if some of the cards they were put on are not that good. So I hope the devs take note of this, and yeah, see what happens. Oh, this is he's explaining more Taunt mechanics. I'm not even going to do this. So yeah, thanks for watching. Vote away, and I'll see you guys next time.